Welcome to the Forensic Financialist, where we simplify business and leadership challenges and choose the road that leads to wisdom and excellence. We discuss tough issues facing business and figure out easy-to-implement solutions. Using the rearview mirror approach, we look in the rear view to move towards a brighter future. Here's your host, Jeff Newkirk.
Welcome to the Forensic Financialist, where we aim to improve your business and help you grow both personally and professionally. I'm your host, Jeff Newkirk. Well, today is part 2 of our discussion on core values. You may recall that last episode we defined what core values means, and I presented the first 2 of my 7 core values, and those are serve others and have faith. Well, today we're going to talk about the next 2 of my 7, and those include being a lifelong learner, which I like to refer to as the triple L, and then being compassionate. I said in my last episode that I'm not going to be referencing anyone else's work or definitions as I describe my core values, because I want you to just get it from me. I want you to know what I believe and what I want and how I'm trying to take this core value and implement it into my life. I think that'll be more meaningful and helpful as you determine what your core values are and implementing them into your life. And I'm not going to preach. That's not at all what I want to do. So I hope that doesn't come across, but I want to convey the importance of having core values. I'm not perfect. I'm a long ways from that. I fall short every single day, but I truly, truly believe from the bottom of my heart that the core values help me every single day, help me with my decision making, and they guide me to be a better person. Okay, before we get started today, I'm going to tell you a little story. My dad grew up on a farm in Iowa. He was proud of being an Iowa farm boy. One day when he was about 10 or so, he was doing his chores, and one of his chores was he had to clear hay from the barn. It was early in the morning, and his job was, clearing hay from the barn. So he was up in the barn, had a pitchfork, and started to move some hay. Well, as he was doing this, he noticed out of the corner of his eye some of the hay sort of moving around. Well, he didn't think much of it, or at least that's what he told me. But then as he continued to clear the hay, he saw a man stand up from underneath. And it was a homeless gentleman who suddenly just stood up in front of him. And as my dad put it, he nearly soiled himself right there. Well, I'm sure, he was 10. The homeless man, he said, he wasn't mean, wasn't confrontational or belligerent. Rather, he was contrite. He was embarrassed, and he was very humble. He apologized to my dad for startling him, and then he quickly left the barn and ran off through the field. My dad, being scared, went into the house and told his dad, my grandfather. My grandfather asked, "Well, did you hurt him with your pitchfork?" My dad said, "No." Kind of irritated that he was like, "Hey, did you hurt this other guy?" I mean, I was the one that was scared, right? But my grandfather then asked, "Well, did you help him?" And my dad said, "No." And then my grandfather asked, "Why not?" Now, in today's world, I get it. We probably would not advocate for our 10-year-old child to help somebody sleeping in our barn. But this was 1942 in rural Iowa, and my grandfather wanted to express to my dad that for those who have much, much is expected. And what he was trying to say is my dad should have helped this man because he has much. Well, my dad never forgot that, and he told me that story so I would never forget that. I would never forget that if we have much, much is expected of us. I love that story. Great lesson learned. Now, let's talk about being a lifelong learner, the triple L. What does it mean to be a lifelong learner? Well, when I finished my last exam for my MBA at the University of Iowa, some of my classmates and I went to a local bar called the Airliner in Iowa City. And I remember specifically saying, "Whew, man, that is the last test I am ever going to take in my life." And then I finished my comprehensive exams for my doctorate degree. And I remember saying, that is the last test I am ever going to take. I am never going to take another test. I'm never going to take another class. I'm done. Well, that is not necessarily the case. I have taken several courses since then. I've taken lots of tests. I read lots of books. What does that mean? Well, it simply means that we should never stop learning it. I try to expand my knowledge every day. We need to be open to reading books, learning new principles from our greatest thought leaders, read about history, attend seminars. We can only be at our best if we continue to learn. The person who continues to learn every day seeks wisdom. And a wise person doesn't have all the answers, but does have the opportunity to gain trust, credibility, and influence. Now, I'm the first one to admit, by far, I don't have all the answers. And I never thought for a second that I was going to take on the triple L core value of being a lifelong learner. I mean, I didn't want to take another test. I didn't want to read another book. But I quickly learned that the only way to add value to other people is to expand your knowledge. The only way to expand your knowledge is to read, take classes, go to seminars, be open and receptive. That way, you're always at the top of your game and you're always able to help people. So even if you don't want to, necessarily maybe be a lifelong learner, I think you should, but at least take little steps each week, each month to expand your knowledge. Be open to it. You never know. The next thing you might decide to be a lifelong learner. And that's not such a bad thing. The next core value I want to talk about is having compassion. Okay, first, let's define compassion because I think people get a little uncertain. What does compassion really mean? Well, it means that we're going to be there for someone else. It means that you're going to be there when people are in need. You're not going to walk away when somebody asks you for help. There are some great synonyms that maybe be better able to define compassion that you might relate to a little bit better. And some of those I like to mention here: charity, commiseration, good one, mercy, sympathy, all good ones. My favorite is kindliness. How many times have you heard, just be kind? Just be kind. Why? Why do you hear that all the time? Because this is what we need more than ever. When you turn on, let me ask you a question. When you turn on the TV and watch the news, how much kindness do you see? I would suspect very little. Kindness. It's what we need. Compassion. And here's the thing. It doesn't cost anything. It doesn't cost a penny to be kind. It's not hard to be compassionate. And we can do it every day. Every day. I'm going to brag about my son, Peyton, for a second. When he was about 6, he played in a basketball league, a little startup league, trying to teach the kids basketball. And in this league, they just wanted to teach the game. There are no wins or losses. It was just learning the game. Well, of course, there are some kids that just want to take over and win, and some parents want to see their kids win. Well, even with that, I was pretty proud of my son. I think he really learned more out of that experience than just basketball. So on his team, there was another young player who was really struggling and didn't quite understand the game and had some challenges dribbling and so forth. And, you know, during one of the games, my son, it was just awesome to see. He actually stopped the game. He had the ball, stopped the game, gave the basketball to this other young player who was struggling, and let him take a shot. And this other young player made the basket. And that put a smile on this young player's face. He was so happy. He was jumping up and down. He turned to his parents. The parents were screaming. They were so happy. And I thought, my kid gets it. My kid gets it. It's not about winning the game. It's about helping others, adding value. I'll never forget that. That was just a great, proud moment. Joseph Carey Merrick was born on August 5th, 1862, and he's often referred to as John Merrick. Well, shortly after he was born, he began to develop severe abnormalities. His mother died when he was only 11, and his father rejected him. He ended up working in a union workhouse outside of London until he was about 18. And at that point, he was actually put on display as a circus sideshow, and he was called the Elephant Man. Can you believe this? Taking a young man, putting him in front of others, they would pay to laugh at this young man. John Merrick experienced the worst of people. His father disowned him. People paid to laugh at him. He was beaten. He was abused. I mean, can you imagine? And at the age of 24, he was admitted to the London hospital, where Dr. Frederick Treves started to take care of him. Many people told Dr. Treves, just look away. This John Merrick is a freak. Don't help him. Well, Dr. Treves didn't listen. He took care of him. He got a place for him to stay, so John Merrick could actually stay safe in a room, sleep in a chair or a bed. And in Dr. Treves' writings, they found a story describing a situation where a female friend of Dr. Treves visited John Merrick just to say hello. And as this young woman walked into the room and said hello to John Merrick, he became uncontrollably emotional. He just was crying profusely. They couldn't understand why. Well, he later confessed that this visit from this young woman who was so kind was the first time that a woman ever smiled at him. Can you imagine the life that John Merrick lived? He died at the age of 27. You might be asking, why do I share the story of John Merrick? Well, he experienced both unbelievably mean-spiritedness and at the same time, later in his life, incredible kindness. Was it easy for Dr. Treves to show kindness? I'm sure it wasn't. Was it the right thing to do? Yes, it was. Sometimes being kind and being compassionate is challenging. You're not going to be the most popular person when you're acting compassionate. Often it's easier to go along with the crowd and just be mean. Don't go along with the crowd. Be compassionate. Stand out on your own. Be a Dr. Treves. Be kind. We need compassion. We need kindness, now more than ever. Well, this is some heavy stuff, but it's so important. I hope this discussion of the triple L, being a lifelong learner, and compassion has been of value to you. We're going to wrap up our core value discussion in my next episode, when we're going to talk about accountability, integrity, and humility. Well, that's a wrap for today. As always, I'm so grateful that you listened. My hope is that you received at least one nugget of useful information and maybe even got a little inspired. If you want to talk further about core values or business assessment, I'd love to hear from you. My website is www.pembusinessconsulting.com. That's PEM businessconsulting.com, or you can email me at info@pembusinessconsulting.com. I hope to hear from you. Make today a good one, and then make tomorrow even better. Thanks so much. Peace, everyone.
You've been listening to the Forensic Financialist, where we simplify business and leadership challenges and choose the road that leads to wisdom and excellence. To learn more about Jeff, visit his website at understandablesolutions.com or email Jeff at jeff@understandablesolutions.com. Mentioning this podcast will get you a complimentary discovery session with Jeff. Until next time.